Welcome to the Smart Legacy Podcast, your resource for protecting assets and securing your future. Hosted by Stockton and Kandt, join us as we cover essential estate planning and elder law topics, such as wills, trusts, and Medicaid planning. Stockton and Kandt, your trusted attorney advisors in safeguarding what matters most. Welcome to another episode of your Smart Legacy Podcast. Kind of froze there for a second. Smart Legacy Podcast. So I'm your host, Glenn Stockton. I'm in studio here today with Sophia Kandt, who is my daughter and partner attorney. And so, Sophia, welcome back today.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking today about taxes. So it's been in the news.
Yeah.
So we had recently had the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, OBA, as it's I see it most frequently being referred to now. But we've got the tax bill that was passed because it was set, our current tax code was set to go away. It sunsetted at the end of this year, 2025, and we were going to then sunset back to the prior tax code, which was in existence before the first Trump administration back in 2015. So with the passage of OBA, we're now in, we have permanency in our tax code. And as we all know, permanency means until Congress decides to change the rules again, right? But at least there's not a sunset provision this time. So a lot happened with this tax bill. And we're not going to break down everything that this tax bill does. I mean, that would be, we'd have to have a whole series of shows on that. But I want to talk today about the ones that seem to be the most relevant to estate planning. So we'll kind of get in a little bit about some of the things it did, but then focus on the things that go to estate planning. So before we do, I think, Sophia, you'd made a good point before we went on air talking about why does this stuff matter, right? Setting the stage of how does this all fit in to a well thought out estate plan. And when we do estate planning, we think about it as there being four legs to the stool. So one is the documents and stuff, right? The traditional estate planning documents go in, make sure we have a plan in place to deal with incapacity, deal with end-of-life decisions, making sure our assets go to who we want, when we want, the way we want as we go in. Another one deals with long-term care, making sure that we hope we never need nursing care, but if we need to go into assisted living, nursing care, home health care, whatever the case is, it's expensive. How are we going to pay for that? Certainly there's tax considerations that go into that aspect of the planning. How do we leverage those expenses, because there's a lot we can do there from a tax standpoint. But that long-term care, making sure we have a plan, and that's one of the areas that we've talked about that in a prior podcast where we see people fail to plan there, right? That leg's missing from their plan, and they don't go see the elder law attorney until they're there, right? They're seated at the admissions desk and there's something. So making sure we've got that leg in place. Another one's wealth building. How do we maximize the growth, grow the estate, making sure that, we're rebalancing portfolios and diversifying risk and all those things that, the financial advisors are maybe doing, but that's part of the leg, right? After all, we're planning for assets. And then the final leg, and the one we're going to focus on today, is taxes. How do we minimize the impact of taxes? Not just at death. How do we minimize taxes while we're alive? And again, it's one of the ones that we see that leg often missing.
Right. And if you're missing a leg, if you haven't planned for all of this, then maybe your estate plan is not going to work the way that you really want it to work. I do see, with the leg of the taxes, lots of people work with CPAs, and CPAs do a really great job of finding ways to minimize the amount of taxes that you pay right now in this year. And so you got to make sure that you're looking at that, obviously, but you're also looking at in retirement, in the future, legacy that you're leaving to your children, making sure that you are planning to pay the least amount of taxes when that time comes.
Yeah, and I often say, and I say it somewhat jokingly, although I think there's some truth in it, a lot of our tax preparers, whether they're CPAs, enrolled A, whatever they are, the people who prepare tax returns, our tax preparers, I often say they're great historians. They take what you did in the prior year and put it into your tax return, to maximize your deductions. What the good ones do is start talking about not only how can I save you taxes this year, but maybe, hey, next year let's do something else. But
Right.
typically our tax preparers are not playing down the board, thinking through how we're going to save taxes over your lifetime.
Right.
And we see that as our role as an estate planning attorney, is how do we minimize that impact of taxes? And so we're going to go through that. Before I do want to do just a real quick summary of some of the things that have come in. And like I said, the one big, beautiful bill did a whole lot of things when it came to taxes. But I'm going to go through just some of them here that we have. And so one of them had to do with the permanency of the tax brackets, right? So where, as I said before, it was the tax brackets we're in for 2025 were set to expire. We were going to sunset back to the tax brackets that were in place in 2015 because the prior act had been for a period of 10 years, right? It had been passed for a 10-year period of time. So now we've made those tax brackets permanent. And so we know where we're going forward with that. But there's been some other changes, too, that have occurred to this. So maybe you talk a little bit about some of the, from just a high-level view, some of the changes that this act has brought to us.
Yeah, and we're still discovering them as we go. It's a big act, and people are still working through it all. But the annual exclusion, that remains the same, $19,000, and that's adjusted for inflation from here on out. We have the lifetime exclusion. So how much, you like to explain it, I think the way that you explain it is really great, is you get a coupon, right? And you can gift over your lifetime, or you can leave to your family up to, and that number has been changing, but now that's what we call the coupon. You can leave and you don't pay taxes on that. So that coupon now is currently at 13.99, and that's going to go to $15 million per individual. So you get $15 million coupon to leave to your family. And that's going to be adjusting for inflation as well. There will be reduced taxes on Social Security at certain income levels. And we'll see some increases in child care credit. So for those young families, that's really important, and it will be really helpful.
Absolutely.
There's going to be some changes to how we can give charitably.
Yep.
That'll be a big one, and I think maybe we'll touch on that today. And and then the tax brackets, right? It's permanent now. It's no longer going to expire, and now we know what we're going to be looking at least in the next several years until they decide to change it again. So,
as we're going, before we get into strategies, if you will, of how people can use the tax laws and the rules in our favor. I do want to talk about the estate tax issues here. But there's a quote that comes to mind, and this quote came from Judge Leonard Hand. He was a second, I think he was the, was it second district? Anyhow, I think it was the second district, but he was Court of Appeals. But he was one. He wrote a lot of opinions. We read a lot of him when we were in
Some
law
fun
school.
ones, yeah.
And one of the quotes that Judge Hand had that stuck with me, he said, there are two systems of taxation in America, one for the informed and one for the uninformed. Now, obviously, we don't have two systems of taxation in this country. We have one. But if we understand the rules, right, and that's what he was trying to say, and this was a case that came before him on some tax planning. He says, if you understand the rules, you can use them to your benefit. This is the rules, this is the laws, and none of us are obligated to pay more in taxes. And so if the rules allow us to take advantage of them, then he was saying the informed people do so, and that's perfectly fine to do tax planning. So we're going to talk about how we do it. So let's start big picture. Everybody talks about, well, I say everybody, in the legal world, we find there's so much focus on the estate tax. And we find clients who come in and they're worried about estate taxes and they're worried about gift taxes. And what we like to tell people is, hey, if that's a problem for you, it's a great problem to have. Most of us do not have this problem.
Probably really not your problem.
Right. For most people, it's not going to be a problem. And yeah, I like the coupon because I think it helps us understand this. But as I tell people, under current law, 2025, each one of us, every American taxpayer, so every citizen or lawful resident has a $13.99 million coupon.
If you're a married couple,
each husband's got 13.99,
right.
wife's got 13.99. Together that's a lot of money. Almost 27.98. Am I doing that right? I think, but yeah, almost $28 million of coupon that they can use. Meaning, you can give away during your lifetime, you can give away at your death, or a combination thereof. Give away some during lifetime, some with death, up to $13.99 million, and pay zero in gift tax and zero in estate tax.
Right.
And your beneficiaries that receive that money don't pay gift tax.
Right.
They don't pay estate tax, right?
Yeah.
We completely eliminate $13.99 million. The OBA, the one big beautiful bill, is in 2026 adjusting that up from 13.99 to 15 million even. Right. And then it will adjust for inflation thereafter.
Right.
So starting next year, everybody will have a $15 million coupon. So estate and gift taxes are not the problem. But yet people come in all the time. Well, my advisors told me I got to keep the gift under. It's currently $19,000, as you said. It's set to continue at $19,000. It'll adjust for inflation, but the inflation's got to go up next quarter. It'll move it to the next 1,000, so it'll go to $20,000. So it's going to stay at $19,000. Meaning, all that means is this, right? I can give away, you can give away, everybody can give away up to $19,000 to any one individual in any one calendar year, and not use any of their $13.99 million coupon. That's all it means.
That's it, right.
So if I want to give $19,000 to one child, 19 to another child, 19 to another child, $19,000 to each of their spouses, $19,000 to each of the grandkids.
And by the way, your spouse as well, $19,000 to each of them as well.
So if I can give that to each person, as long as I don't exceed $19,000 in that calendar year, because that's the current amount, I've not used any of my, we'll call it $14 million coupon, my 13.99. I haven't used any of the coupon. I still have the coupon left. If I gave $20,000 to an individual, right? Well, $19,000 of that was my annual exclusion. I've not used any coupon, but that additional $1,000, I just used $1,000 of my $13.99 million. Okay, I think we got enough coupon to go around. That's not the problem. So I tell people, if you want to see your children and grandchildren enjoy the money while you're still alive and you want to do gifting, don't feel restricted or limited by the annual exclusion amount. Not unless you have a really large estate or expecting a really large estate. For most of us, that's not the concern. So if you want to give money away, don't let that be the reason you don't do it. So, that is largely staying in place with some adjustments to the number going from 13.99 to 15. So we get it roughly another $1 million each person that they can give away. That's estate and gift taxes. And by the way, I do want to say this. If we give more than that $19,000, more than the annual exclusion amount, that $20,000, it does trigger the requirement that we file a gift tax return. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean any taxes due. It just says, hey, you've got to report that because IRS wants to keep track of how much of your coupon have you used during your lifetime. It's an informational return only. The penalty for failure to file a gift tax return when no gift tax is due is zero. Right. There's no penalty, but I would still encourage people, file it. Just file it. It's an easy return. It's an informational return only. All right. Mm-hmm. So that's gift and estate taxes. We don't have estate taxes at the state level here in Kansas or Missouri where we practice. Right. Some people may be listening, they're in a state that does have an estate tax at a state level. So for those people, they need to be aware of that. What is that estate tax? And there's a lot of planning that estate planning attorneys can help people do to minimize or avoid that. But at the federal level, it's not going to kick in until $15 million starting next year. And we don't have the state level here. So for our clients, that's not a concern. Where is the concern? Well, it goes to two things. Capital gains taxes and income taxes, and income taxes being the bigger of the two. So let's talk a little bit about capital gains. Yeah. you are helping a lot of clients do, Medicaid planning
Right.
for long-term care,
Right.
and working with people who did not plan in advance, right? They're coming to you. They're
Right.
the ones I say were already seated at the admissions desk in the nursing home before they come see the attorney. So they're coming to see you, and you're seeing people who, luckily, most of the time you're able to reverse it, but they've
Right.
made some mistakes because they were doing a little self-lawyering. So maybe
Yeah.
talk us through what you see commonly come in.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most common strategies I see people do on their own before they come meet with me is, hey, I'm going into a nursing home or expecting to in the near future. So I'm going to get my child on the deed to my home. So I'm going to name them as an owner on my deed. Right then and there, they've given them that property. We'll say from a Medicaid standpoint, that's a big concern because now we have potentially caused some really big impact on being able to be eligible for Medicaid in the future. But that's not the point of this topic now. It's right now we've transferred a portion of that property to them. And so what happens? Well, they haven't been thinking through how does that actually work in the end? And tax-wise, I mean, that could impact them in paying thousands of dollars of additional taxes because now that child is on the deed of the home before they're deceased. And so there's capital gains taxes. I believe it's 20% that we pay in taxes. Is that right?
Roughly between federal and state level, you're roughly about 20% in capital gains taxes.
Right.
Yeah, we've lost the step up in basis, right? Or in
Right.
your scenario
Right.
where they put on with them, it's they get a partial step up, but they're not
Right.
going to get the full. But often we'll see, no, they've just decided through their self-lawyering, hey, if I put my kid's name on here, it's not my asset. If we
Right.
made it 5 years, well, that probably worked. It was more than 5 years ago. Yeah, you
Right.
did that, but you didn't do your kids any favor, right?
Right, yeah.
They just don't know it yet because
Right.
they haven't got hit with the tax bill.
Right, which is coming, and it's going to be significant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, we say because they've lost the step up. Meaning, so let's talk about step up. What is step up? So step up in basis simply means this: let's use the home as an example. We purchase the home, right? So let's say we purchase this home for $65,000, right? And it's now increased in value. It's worth, $365,000. We bought it back in the early '80s for $65,000, and now it's worth $365,000. We've had $300,000 of gain, capital gain. If mom and dad sell that home during their lifetime, right, the people own the home,
Right.
it's been their primary residence. So it's exempt from capital gains taxes under Section
Right.
121 IRS code. They don't pay any taxes. Each of us get another coupon. We have a $250,000 coupon each, right? Have that. So husband and wife had $500,000 of coupon
All
that they
that
could use.
gain that they've had from that, I think you said $65,000 to
Yep.
the $325,000. All that gain,
Yep.
nobody is paying taxes on it.
Yep. So it's exempt, right? Because
Right.
we had an exemption. But if we wait it till death, if we gave it to the children at death, the children get what's called a step up in basis under tax law. So the cost basis or tax basis is $65,000. At time of death, it's $365,000. So the tax basis steps up to that date of death value of $365,000, zero paid.
Right.
In
Right.
capital
Now
gains
that child
taxes.
gets the property at that value. So all that gain that's been made, all that increase in value, we don't have to pay taxes on it. Your children don't have to pay taxes on it. Your descendants, we've got that step up in basis. And so by adding your child to the deed while you're still alive, you lose that ability.
Right.
People don't know that. I get it. And so we can certainly reverse it when that happens, but
treat it as
is
a
a big deal.
constructive trust. Right. So we want to preserve the step up in basis. So the biggest mistake we see with people in that is doing gifting while they're alive.
Right.
And they're doing it for two primary reasons typically. One, as you talked about, Medicaid plan. Oh, if I get this asset out of my name, it won't count against me for Medicaid. As long as you did it 5 or more years beforehand, you're absolutely right. You would. Because when it comes, as we talked about in a prior episode, you either go through the Medicaid spend down, your only option is to avoid it, spend it or give it away. Right? Or put it in a trust. So go through the spend down, give it away or put it in a trust. Here they gave it away. Yep, more than 5 years ago, it worked. But as we said, we didn't necessarily do them any favors. We have to be aware of the tax. Plus, we've lost total control of the asset. And if we don't make it 5 years, that's a big deal.
Right. And by the way, on that, and I don't know if you're going to mention this, but if you put in the trust, you got to make sure that you've designed the trust properly, because if you don't design the trust properly, well, you could still have the same issue. So making sure you're very careful in how you design this trust to get it out of your name, get it into a trust, but then your children still get that step up in basis.
It's one, because taxes are where we can gain so much ground. We can really do some great things with taxes, but you need to understand the rules. You understand how it works. We were having a discussion, just you and I think it was this morning, we were talking about, the do-it-yourself, trusts and wills you do there. Usually they don't have really any provisions for tax plan. Why? Because there's too many ways people can go wrong with this. Well, as attorneys, I want to make sure we're using this. I want to make sure we're preserving step up in basis. I want to make sure that we're not paying trust tax rates, and so many things would go in. So let's get into some of those areas. So capital gains at death, easy to avoid, but it's easy to mess up. And the most common way we mess it up is by putting the kid's name either on title with us or totally transferring it from us to them. And we've lost step up in basis.
Right.
So that one's easy to avoid. We may have another episode at some point in the future where we talk about how we minimize the impact of capital gains taxes during our lifetime. But this is when we're passing assets at death. We want to make sure we preserve that step up in basis. Another one I want to talk about is, and this is a big one with our tax brackets where they are. We're in a historically low tax environment, and we've been there for the last 10 years. And now with the passage of this act, we know that it's going to continue for the foreseeable future, right? So we're in this low tax environment. So Roth conversions, Roth IRA strategies have been in the news a lot over the last 10 years. I think they can make a lot of sense even when we're in a higher tax environment, but they make incredible sense when we're in a low tax environment.
Right.
But again, you got to work within the rules, you got to work within the brackets, or you create the very problem you were trying to avoid, which is paying too much in taxes.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about, what is a Roth and what would a Roth conversion strategy look like. So maybe Sophia, help our listeners understand what is a traditional IRA and how does that differ from a Roth IRA?
So a lot of people have Roth or have IRAs. And when I ask that question, is it traditional or Roth IRA? A lot of times people don't actually know what they have because it doesn't mean anything to them whether they have traditional or Roth. So if we have traditional IRA, and that's typically how most people have their retirement account set up, it's a traditional IRA. And I love the way that you explain it. I'm going to steal the way you've explained this before because it makes so much sense. But when you have the traditional IRA, you're putting contributions into the IRA. And most of what is in an IRA is actually growth. And so you put the contributions in the IRA, and then everything from there on out is growth. And what happens is you haven't paid taxes on the IRA when you put it in there, and then it's growing and it's growing and growing and growing, and you still haven't paid taxes on it, but you're not getting out of that. So at the back end, this is what I love your explanation is now you've got Uncle Sam and you've got, I think, Aunt Iris is the IRS, which I love
Aunt
that.
Iris,
Aunt Iris, yeah. They're at the back door, and you're going to pay taxes on that. And you're going to pay taxes on, again, all of your contributions and all of your gain, which is the majority of what's in that retirement account. So you're paying taxes on a lot. Now, if you do have a Roth IRA, you're paying taxes on just your contributions. You're paying taxes at the front end, at the front door. But then all of that gain now is tax-free. And so you're able to leave that to your family tax-free. In retirement years, it's tax-free. You've already paid the taxes on it. So when we think of Roth conversion, right, that you said that's in the news and people are starting to hear about it. So when I do mention that, hey, have you considered a Roth conversion here? They say, oh, yeah, I've heard about it, but it doesn't make sense. I don't know what it means. We've got to really manage the tax brackets. So if we're sitting comfortably in the 22% tax bracket and we've got, we can still make $100,000 or $50,000 more in income that year, well, let's you can continue to take income out of your traditional IRA, pay the taxes on it now, this year, while we are in this low tax environment, pay the taxes on it at your 22% tax bracket. Now, put it into a Roth, and now all of that gain from there on out is tax-free because you've already paid the taxes on it. But maybe you have $200,000 left in your traditional IRA. So I'm talking about managing tax brackets. You can say, hey, the next tax bracket's only 24%. Pretty minimal difference between 22% and 24%. So, okay, let's contribute and take out from that traditional IRA all of it, because we're not going to the next tax bracket after we go 22%, 24%, and then it jumps a bigger jump to 32%. So it's a big jump. Probably don't want to pay 32% in taxes on everything we've taken out. So managing the tax brackets, let's take a little bit this year, a little bit next year, stay within that, and then roll that into a Roth IRA, convert that to a Roth IRA, and then we've got tax-free growth from there on out, again, for yourself in retirement, to your children. It saves thousands of dollars.
You know, and I would say for most people, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So when you were talking about that, an Aunt Iris that would go in, which is, Uncle Sam and Aunt Iris that come in. So there's a commercial, and I cannot think of what company it is, but it's been on TV recently, when the aunts come to visit, and they're coming to the door and they got their suitcase, and then they're in and critiquing him, and the husband and wife are sitting on the couch as they're, their aunts going through and checking the things in the refrigerator and on their shelves, and expired. So Uncle Sam and Aunt Iris come to visit. And when we use IRAs, as you said, you're going to see Uncle Sam and Aunt Iris either way. But with the Roth IRA, they're at the front door, and you're paying taxes on the contribution amount, but that money grows tax-free for the rest of your life. With traditional, you slipped in the front door. You didn't pay taxes, but they come knocking at the back door. Currently, it's age 73, right? It used to be 70 and a half, then it went to 72. That's age 73. Your Uncle Sam and Aunt Iris come knocking at the back door and say, you got to start taking money out. You got to start taking out your RMD, required minimum distribution. You got to take it out whether you want it or not, whether you need it or not. They don't care. Uncle Sam wants his money, and he's got his hands out saying, take it out, pay your taxes. And if you don't get around to paying the taxes on those traditional retirement accounts during your lifetime, when it passes on to the beneficiaries, typically the kids, they will pay taxes at whatever their tax rate is, at whatever tax rates are in the future.
And they also have to take it out within 10 years.
And they got to take it out within 10 years. So it was really when the Secure Act passed and took it, because the kids used to have, their entire life expectancy is what their required distributions on a beneficiary IRA were. And they had their whole lifetime to take that money out, pay a little bit of taxes, let it grow, pay taxes, what we call a stretch IRA. Well, the Secure Act ended that. It said, nope, it's got to come in 10 years. So it was really a backdoor tax increase, right? We're giving you a tax break up here on the front side by reducing tax brackets, but we're increasing tax on the back end because we see all of this wealth that's sitting here in these retirement accounts of baby boomers, and we're going to get that tax money, and we're going to get it faster.
Right.
So the kids have to pay it. So how can we be smart about this? Back to Judge Leonard Hand. The informed to systems taxation, one for the uninformed, one for the informed. So we're trying to help people be informed about how do we minimize the impact of taxes. So there's two ways we can get money into a Roth, right? Contributions, as you were saying, we put money in, as we're earning money each year, we're able to put some money in. There's contribution limits. With a Roth, there's also some income limits of who's eligible. Now, there's an easy workaround, again, for the informed. We do what's called a backdoor Roth. We make a contribution to a traditional IRA, and then we're going to use a conversion strategy then to immediately convert it to a Roth. But we're still stuck with limits. We can only contribute a certain amount into our IRA each year. And to be eligible to make a contribution to an IRA, we have to have something called a JOB, a job, right? We have to have earned income. So if you're not working anymore, well, guess what? You're not going to be eligible to make contributions. So you're going to have to go get a job and be the Walmart greeter or something so that you can continue to make those contributions. But the other way we can get money into a Roth besides a contribution instantly what's called a conversion, a Roth conversion. And here there are no limits. There's no limits of how much we can move. There's no limits of how, what your income is or what your, wealth is. If Bill Gates wanted to, convert all of his retirement money over to Roth, he could convert millions.
And I think the IRS would be very pleased with that,
they
because
would be
they want the taxes. And as we can see through all of these tax bills that are passing, they're trying to figure out how can we get the taxes now rather than later. So with a Roth conversion strategy, then to maximize that, as you were saying, it's all about bracket management, right? It's the analytics. How much wiggle room do you have? So our tax code, we go from 10% the bottom tax bracket, 10% we go to 12, 12 we jump to 22, 22 we go to 24, 24 we jump to 32, and it just goes up. Most people find themselves in the 22 or 24% tax bracket, right? Middle class brackets. If you're in a 10 or 12% bracket, I tell people it isn't going to get cheaper. I mean, I don't have the crystal ball. I don't know, but I can tell you that's a low tax rate. And as we said, it's not like this money's never going to get taxed. It's going to get taxed. Yeah, it's either taxed during your lifetime through those required minimum distributions, which start at age 73 if you're born 1960 or after. So for us, we don't have to start paying until age 75. If you're born before 1960, your RMDs, required minimum distributions, start at age 73. That's when Uncle Sam comes knocking. And you're going to pay taxes. And if you don't get around to paying taxes during your lifetime, then your beneficiaries, kids, whoever's inheriting, they're going to pay taxes at their tax
rate, at whatever they are in the future. And they've got this increased level. It's pushing them up the tax ladder into higher brackets. So how do we take advantage of the brackets that we have? And if we're in the 22% bracket, as you said, Sophia, I agree with you 100%. I'm not sure I even see a yield sign between 22 and 24, but there's a stop sign at the end of the 24% bracket because our next bracket up is 32%, and we're creating the very problem we were trying to avoid by paying too much in taxes. So it becomes about bracket management. And what I tell people is, ultimately, if I was to look at the analytics of this, and which I, like to get geeky and do that, when I'm looking at the analytics, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to flatten the distribution curve of the IRA, right? These forced distributions. The earlier I can start, the greater impact I can have on this at low tax rates. I'm trying to flatten the distribution curve. And if I can flatten the distribution curve out of my retirement accounts, I'm reducing significantly the amount of taxes, hugely. As I said, for most people, when I run the analysis, over the course of a lifetime and that of the kids, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in saved money over time. Small hinges swing big doors. Get started early. Do it consistently.
And as we talked about before, our two of our biggest assets are generally our house and our retirement accounts. And here we've just talked about two ways to significantly, protect your family and save hundreds of thousands of dollars just on little incremental changes and making sure that you are working with someone who understands the tax laws and understands how your estate plan impacts all of this.
Yeah, so if somebody's in the 22% tax bracket, we can say, do we think it's going to be lower in the future? Right. Well, historically, no. We're in historical lows. It's not getting lower. And the next bracket's 24, which is still pretty historically low from where it was and where we were probably going in the future, but who knows? So we got 22 and we say, okay, let's fill up that 22. This is where we were on our income through Social Security, pension, whatever our sources of income are, earned income because we're still working, whatever it is, we're in 22. Fill that bracket up. Yeah, okay, we're willing to pay 24. We got that entire breadth, the width of that 24% bracket to make conversions because every dollar, remember a Roth conversion, we're taking money from a traditional IRA, we're moving into the Roth. But every dollar that we convert, every dollar that we move from traditional to Roth, is income to us in the year that we do it, and we're going to pay taxes on it, right? So we move it over to the top of the 24% bracket. The next year we do the same thing, and we continue to do so as long as it makes sense. We're looking at tax brackets, and we want to do that. We're going to pay more taxes in the year that we do it, right? We're fast track. We're the other way, right? With a traditional IRA, the theory was it's income replacement. So yeah, you're not paying taxes now. Just like when you have earned income, you're working, you pay taxes on the money you earn. But we're not paying taxes on the amount we put in our IRA But when we get to retirement, it's true whether it's an IRA, 401k, 403b, any of those traditional retirement accounts, we're not paying tax when we put it in. But the idea is when you get in retirement, that's going to be your income replacement. You take income, and just like you're paying taxes when you're working, now you're going to pay taxes on that. But we can use these rules to our advantage.
I want to make a point there because, I mean, we work in the area of elder law as well, and kind of going back to how does this impact people who are looking to move into a nursing home, and what we can see from statistically, we're going to spend $200,000 per year on long-term care expenses if we go into a nursing home, which is very expensive, and that number is just going up every year. So we talked in an earlier episode that, we can look at Medicaid and having Medicaid come in and help cover long-term care costs. Well, if we've got an IRA, and so many times I've got people who come in and they say, hey, I'm getting ready to see these $200,000 long-term care expenses per year. What can I do? I'm so, I've got a spouse that I've got to protect. What do we do? And sometimes people, they come to me too late and they've already spent down a significant portion of that. But when they come to me and they've got a Roth IRA and they've already paid the taxes on that, and we have to, potentially in a lot of these strategies we have to use to get them eligible for Medicaid, we've got to have them withdraw their money in the Roth IRA. If you've already paid the taxes on it, well, that's going to protect you if you ever do get into that situation. And if I say, if you ever do, now 70% of people over the age of 65 need some sort of long-term care. So it's a really big reality that I think a lot of people will be faced with. So if you do the Roth conversion, not only are you saving in taxes hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you're also, if you get to that point, if you have to take your full IRA out in 1 year, it's not going to even be worth it at that point.
Right.
So it
absolutely gives us options. So Roth, so many advanced Roth. So let me take us through a scenario of what this looks like when we don't plan versus what it looks like with a Roth. So let's say we've had husband and wife, they have not done any Roth conversions. They built up all this money in their traditional retirement accounts. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a 401k, 403b, IRA, they're all IRAs to the extent that they are individual retirement accounts, with individual being the operative word, right? There's no such thing as a joint IRA or a joint 401k. Each person has their own. So they've got this money. We'll just, for sake of ease, we'll use an IRA. They've got their money in this IRA. And it's growing tax deferred. Age 73, Uncle Sam and Iris come to the back door. They're knocking, say, hey, you got to start taking money out. Your required minimum distributions starts at roughly 4%, just slightly less than 4%. They have to take that out, pay taxes on it. Next year, Uncle Sam comes knocking again, but you got to take out a bigger percent. Next year, it goes up. It goes up. It's going to up every year for the rest of your life. You're forced to take it out. Okay? You can take out more, but you have to take out that amount. If you don't take out that amount, you get hit with a penalty, a 25% penalty on the amount you should have taken out that you didn't. And it's in there, and when it comes out, it's going to get taxed again when it comes out, but you're getting hit with a penalty. So you're forced to take it out. And it goes up and up every year. At a time in life when we're usually in standard deduction, we got the fewest amount of deductions that we have. The home's paid off, everything. We're just on standard deduction. And so it's forcing us up the tax ladder, right? It's forcing us to take out more, and it's pushing us into the higher tax brackets. What else is it doing? Well, it may be affecting our Medicare premium. So Medicare insurance, the insurance we get at age 65, right? Pays for hospital stays, doctor visits, prescription drug benefits. Pretty good insurance for us as seniors. But we pay a premium for that. And what's your premium based on? It doesn't matter, male, female, smoker, non-smoker, pre-existing health conditions. None of that matters. Your Medicare premium is based on one thing. What was your income, right? We're subject to what's called IRMA charges. So if we have higher income, we may find that we're blessed to pay higher premiums for our Medicare insurance. Right? So husband and wife, they're each taking out of their IRAs. They're paying the taxes on it. They're getting pushed up the tax brackets. Then husband dies. Wife just went from a joint tax filer to a single tax filer. She just lost the smaller of the two Social Security checks. She lost half of her deductions, and she just went from a joint tax filer table to a single tax filer.
Yeah.
By default, because she's single. Her bracket's just cut in half. But who's typically the beneficiary of the IRA? Well, she was beneficiary of husband, so she's taking out her IRAs, and now she's also taking out from her husband's IRA. She's forced to. Required minimum distributions for the spouse, for his wife, still based on her life expectancy. She's not under the 10-year rule. So taking it out, it's pushing her into higher tax brackets. Right? It's pushing her up because now she's a single tax filer, only without half the deductions. So it's pushing her up, paying her, making her pay more. And it goes up and up every year. It's affecting her Medicare premium, pushing that Medicare premium up. And then she dies, and it goes to the kids, and they got 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all going to be taxed, and the kids may be in their prime earning years. So if we can get ahead of that curve, if we can start, the earlier we start, the better. But even if somebody's already in where they're already in the required minimum distributions, that portion's not eligible for a Roth conversion. You got to take your distribution. You can't convert that to Roth. But thinking out a well-thought strategy, it is one of the things that we go from being the uninformed to the informed. And it was one that I would encourage people to make sure we're looking at taxes, have a strategy to minimize the impact of taxes. All right. We had so much more we wanted to cover.
Yeah.
This is an area, it's like, how do we get excited about taxes. We've never lost our passion for what we do. We're passionate about this stuff. And I hope that comes through to our listeners. So we got a lot of passion with this. Anything you want to say is kind of in closing that?
I just want to remind everybody that estate planning is not a transaction. It's not a one and done process or step. You're not done with it. And so when we do see these changes in the law, which we see changes in the law all the time, but when we see these big changes in the law, it requires that you revisit your estate plan and make sure it's compliant with the new tax laws, and you're taking advantage of any. We talked about some increases in child care credit, all those things. You're taking advantage of that through your estate plan. So please review it.
Yeah, review, come in, sit down with us or another attorney to help look at this. And we didn't even get into qualified charitable distribution rules, charitable giving. So that'll have to be maybe a future episode where we talk about more of this tax planning. So, all right, listeners, I would encourage you to subscribe and like what we're doing. You will find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. You can also go to our website, stocktonlaw.com, and you'll find our podcast there as well as the various platforms that we were on. And you'll find a plethora of additional resources that are available to you. So I encourage you to go to stocktonlaw.com. Tune in for future episodes. We hope to provide you with relevant, helpful information to allow you to make better decisions about your estate plan and how to protect you and your family so that you are leaving a smart legacy for yourself and those who leave behind. Thank you.
The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. Laws vary by state, and this podcast focuses on estate planning and elder law in Kansas and Missouri. If you are located in Kansas or Missouri and require legal advice, please contact our office. Otherwise, consult a qualified attorney licensed in your jurisdiction.